few years ago, Rich the Kid was at the top of the game, dropping platinum hits and working with huge artists like Lil Wayne and Kendrick Lamar. He tried to level up and start his own label, but after a ton of drama, lawsuits, and internal beef, the whole label is falling apart. Here's how Rich Forever, the label, fell off. Rich started dropping music back in 2013, but it took a little while for him to get popping. He linked up with the Migos for a mixtape series called Streets on Lock, and by 2014, he was working with artists like Young Dolph and Kodak Black. Back then, he was hot and dropping new tracks like crazy. In 2015, he dropped 2 collab projects with the Migos, a project with I Love McConan, plus 2 solo tapes with features from all kinds of big artists. In 2017, he signed a deal with Interscope Records, and the next year, he finally dropped his first album and debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 chart. Rich already had a ton of buzz behind his name, and it looked like he was headed right to the top. But Rich decided to branch off and ruin his own career and other artists. Back in 2016, Rich started his own label called Rich Forever Music and signed Famous Dex as his first artist. Dex was buzzing already, but linking up with Rich was supposed to take him to the top. They dropped a few collab tapes together, but by the next year, Dex was already trying to get out of the deal. In 2017, Dex went on IG Live and said he wasn't on Rich Forever anymore. He made it clear that he didn't have any issues with Rich, but obviously, he wasn't happy with his label situation. The label was started with 300 Entertainment as the parent company, and it didn't take long for cracks to start showing up in Rich's relationship with them. Rich told DJ Academics that Dex was still on the label, and he was just pressed about how his album rollout was being handled. But Dex wasn't the only one having label issues. In 2018, Rich posted a video on IG where he aired out 300 Entertainment and said,
300 ENT, y'all suck.
He went on a massive rant against them and said he just wanted out of his contract. He also warned other artists to stay away from them and said,
"This is the worst label ever."
A year after he told everyone he left Rich Forever the first time, Famous Dex hopped back on social media and said, "Oh man, I'm so glad. I'm so happy I'm a free man. I ain't signed to nobody." That turned out to be cap too though, and his latest releases were all through 300 and Rich Forever. Dex has bigger issues to worry about than his label situation though. Fans and other artists started reaching out after he passed out in the middle of an IG Live session and just looked terrible in general. At first, Dex clapped back and said he wasn't even using drugs and told everyone to stay out of his business. But in January 2021, he checked into rehab. Unfortunately, he only stayed for a month and ended up relapsing. And last September, he got booked for violating a protection order his ex had against him. He served about a year in jail, but fans got good news when he announced that he was heading straight to rehab after he got out. Luckily, Dex seems like he's in a better place now. He's not the only rapper who wasn't happy with Rich Forever. Jay Stash was the second artist Rich signed to the label. He showed up on the label's first collab project, Rich Forever Music, but he ended up leaving the label right after. It's not clear what went down behind the scenes or why he left, but Stash's story came to a tragic end this year on New Year's Day. Stash had been dating a woman named Jeanette Gallegos for around a year. She had 3 sons, aged 5 to 11, but Stash wasn't related to any of them. And on New Year's Day, 2022, Stash shot her to death in front of the kids and then turned the gun on himself. One of the boys called their grandma, who told him to call 911 and report it. It's not clear what Stash was going through, but now 3 kids have been tragically left without a mom to raise them. A couple of months later, after Rich signed Dex and Stash, he made a deal with Brooklyn rapper Jay Critch. They worked together for years and seemed really tight, but fans were shocked when Jay hopped on social media last year and aired Rich and the label out. He wrote, "I am not Rich Forever. That shit been a dub. Be your brother until the business come up, then it's all this lawyer talk, contract talk." Rich clapped back on his Insta story and just wrote, "Loyalty over royalty." And then the next day, he went after Jay for going behind his back and snaking him over 100K. According to him, Jay cut a new deal and crossed him out of the picture. Rich said that he made Jay who he was, but Jay had no loyalty at all. Jay responded by accusing Rich of trying to hold him back and trying to get involved with deals he shouldn't even be a part of. The situation looked like it might turn into a full-on beef. Then Rich went on Zane Lowe's New Music Daily Show and said it got out of hand because everyone was mixing up their emotions with business. Luckily, Jay and him were able to squash the beef, and they're still working together even though Jay left the label. Rich doesn't just beef for artists signed to his label. He's also had issues with dudes who wanted to sign but never got the deal done. Back in 2017, Lil Uzi Vert was signed to Generation Now and had some beef over them delaying his album. He tweeted that new rappers shouldn't sign to the label, and Rich hopped on Twitter and said, "That's why you should have signed Rich Forever." Uzi clapped back and told him, "Boy, I'm not signing for 20 racks." The situation wasn't really an issue at that point, but then Rich went on the Cruise show and said he wouldn't sign Uzi because of personal reasons. Uzi responded with an infamous comeback where he posted a picture of himself holding a crab and tagged Rich as the crab. They were just sending shots back and forth on social media, but Rich made the beef official. He dropped the track Dead Friends and said, "Teach you how to be a boss. Top got dropped off, all them dead friends. You a middleman, you a little man, your money getting shorter." Dead Friends was a reference to Uzi's song XO Tour Life. On that track, Uzi said, "I don't care if you cry. On the real, you should've never lied. Saw the way she looked me in my eyes, she said, I am not afraid to die." And on Dead Friends, Rich flipped it and rapped, "Put my pride to the side, I could never lie. I don't care if you cry, let them die." The track was already disrespectful, but the video took it to the next level. Rich hired an Uzi lookalike to get jumped and buried by him and his crew. Uzi responded with the track Rich Forever and said, "I got the Glock and my laser is beaming. These is boring. Tell me when they're leaving. Rainbow on my diamonds, but I am not reading. These is old, yet their hairlines receding." Eventually, the beef led to their viral fight in Philly, where Uzi chased Rich down into a Starbucks and Rich hopped the counter and ran away. Fans clowned them both for the situation, but Rich definitely took the bigger L. Rich and Uzi ended up squashing the beef, but Rich had plenty of other issues to deal with. In 2018, Fashion Nova hired Rich as a celebrity influencer and cut him a $100,000 check in advance. He was supposed to promote the brand on social media and in a song, but apparently, he just took the cash and ran. They sued him for damages, and Rich ended up having to pay over $130K to settle it. That wasn't the only contract he broke though. Back in 2020, his old management group, Blueprint Artist Management, hit him with a $3.5 million lawsuit and said he never paid them their commission. A judge made him pay over $1 million in damages and interest, but his legal trouble didn't stop there. That same year, the news broke that a dude named Peter Marco from Extraordinary Jewels was suing Rich for owing him over $200K from unpaid jewelry. Rich clapped back at the headlines and said he doesn't even use that jeweler, but Marco claims he's been working with Rich since 2017. A month later, a judge ordered Rich to pay over $300K in rent to a landlord in LA. He had rented a mansion back in 2018 and ran out on the lease. Originally, he owed around $20K in back rent, but then the bill got higher and higher the longer he wouldn't pay. Plus, he allegedly trashed the entire place before he left, so damage fees got added on too. If all that wasn't bad enough, last year, a landlord in Manhattan filed another lawsuit against Rich for not paying rent. Last year, Rich told his fans that he had to pay $800K to get out of his recording contract and that he was officially an independent artist. But apparently, the independent route wasn't working for him, because just a couple months later, he signed a new deal with Rostrum Records. Rich is still dropping music, but he hasn't touched the numbers he used to. If he just focused on his own career back when he was popping, he might still be buzzing. But instead, he tried to build a label at the same time and ended up fumbling both bags.